now, all across the globe, leaders are crying out for guidance. They are overwhelmed. Poor decisions being made. There is a lot going on. People are worried artificial intelligence and emerging technologies are going to be taking over an old model of consulting, which is already going the way of the dinosaurs. So what should you be doing to actually keep up to date? So here are 4 models that you can use. We can bring immediate value to the conversation. And so the question is, when it comes to choice, are they going to trust you or are they going to trust a machine? Hi, my name is Russell Pearson and welcome to Your Consulting Business Podcast, episode 131. Today on the show I want to talk about artificial intelligence and emerging technologies because people are worried that artificial intelligence and emerging technologies are going to be taking over. And so I want to talk about today about what are those skills that you should be developing if you don't already have them in your consulting mix, and the difference between what is really a contractor role versus an advisor or consulting role. We've got some new resources that are becoming available for consulting businesses just like yours, and if you'd like one that's available right now, you can go to Russell Pearson Programs and you can download it absolutely free. And so what's the difference between a contractor or an advisor? Well, the contractor is really filling a need role. They're actually being asked to come in and do a specific piece of work for a client. And that's where a contractor really is an employee in the majority of instances. Now, that contractor space, a needs requirement space, is the space that's going to be filled by artificial intelligence and then in the very long term, robotics, right? So that will go away. But the area around advisory is not. And it's not just the advisory where someone says, I need an answer to a thing, because again, I think that's going away as well. Knowledge work, suggestions, recommendations, strategy, a lot of that work will go away because artificial intelligence, even right now, is becoming better than mediocre, better than the average consultant at actually suggesting some paths forward. So where is our place in that? Well, luckily, the place where we exist is to help humans take steps and make decisions. So it's actually humanity that's going to keep us engaged, because even right now, the answers to just about every problem are out there online somewhere, and that people, if they are motivated enough, can get on there and search for the answers and then take action. But the reality is the majority of humans don't. There are all sorts of things that get in the way of them taking action or taking simple steps so that they can get outcomes. And then that's where the advisor, the consultant, the coach comes in to enable them to get the results. And so what is it that's going to help them get a result? It's going to be a person to mentor or guide them along to enable them to take the steps they need to take to do the work. So I've been saying for a long time, many years, that our role as consultants is not to do the work for people, which is why I don't like the contractor model. It's the space to enable our clients to do the work for themselves. And so we are a guide. We are the Merlin on the left-hand side of the Arthur. Arthur does the work. Arthur is the king. He actually goes and conquers and builds Camelot. Merlin is there advising him on the best ways to do it and actually giving him the confidence and the guidance and really the permission to take those steps and do the specific work. So that's our role. We sit on the left-hand side of the ruler and we actually advise them to do better stuff. Now, right now, all across the globe, leaders are crying out for guidance. They are overwhelmed. There is a lot going on, and that's why you can see some poor decisions being made, because there are too many people in a contractor role just being yes people for those leaders rather than the Merlin on the left-hand side guiding them and actually instructing them and helping them and mentoring them into a better future. And so once we have better consultants in there guiding these individuals, we're going to have better leaders. And so whether it be for someone in a leadership position or whether it's somebody who isn't seeing themselves as a leader and they just need to take steps, our role there is to guide them to take those steps. So there are 3 things I think are really important to skill yourself up to enable you to help them take those steps. So if we look to the future and we look to the current model of consulting, a lot of consultants are engaging in proposal-based work where a client is asking for some result or some advice to be given to them. And so they put that request out, consultants answer that request, and they come in and they give recommendations. The reality is artificial intelligence can give recommendations that are as good or better, faster, and so it plays into multiple value drivers that are going to have clients make different decisions that they're making today. So if you're happy just to stick with knowledge work and you're happy just to talk about your expertise and the specific advice that they should be taking or steps that they should be taking, you will be out of business in a very, very near future. But if you're willing to adapt to a mixed modality, which means that you're not just a consultant anymore, you're a consultant, you're a guide, you're an advisor, you're a mentor, you're a trainer, you're an educator, you're a coach. And having some of these mixed modalities, and if you don't already know that there are different variations to the way consulting can be done, it's now time for you to start using artificial intelligence and other ways to educate yourself to understand what are the different frameworks and modalities out there and how do they differ from what I'm doing right now. Because the new future is going to be about supporting these humans to make these decisions and take these steps, because that's the nature of humanity. It's human nature to actually not do what's in the best interests of the individual. And so how can we guide people to enable them to make the decisions and take the steps that are going to enable them to get the outcomes? That's the nature of today's conversation. Let's get into it. Now, the thing that's going to make consultants most valuable is being able to work with the client in the moment. Right now, there are frameworks and there are processes that we should know that we can learn to enable us to do that work with clients there and then. And if we're having to go and reference what are those processes and frameworks and then come back to the client, they might as well just do the same thing with an artificial intelligence. And so your role as a consultant is to learn these processes and procedures, these frameworks, so that we can actually use them directly there with the client when we need to use them. And the other side of that is that we know what those processes are and the client probably doesn't know what those processes are. So our ability to run those processes with or for a client, even without their permission, because we can actually start a process to help them unpack what's going on in their world, which is going to enable us to be immediately valuable, which is where our value lays. So it's going to be in the immediate. One of the things that certainly happened over the last number of decades is that consultants have gone from this place of coming and speaking to a client, going away into their quiet workshops or whatever, and actually drilling out plans and creating strategic reports and then giving them back to the client and hoping they're going to do something with them. People already understand that there is very little value in documentation. And so really the value now is about working with a client and helping them take these steps and make these decisions. Now, over time, they're going to be able to use artificial intelligence to do just that, but they need to know what to ask the AI. They need to know how to use the AI to get that output. So what we can do, and where the value comes in, is if we know what the processes are, if we know what the models are, we can bring immediate value to the conversation rather than having to go and actually reference it at another point and then come back later. So immediate value, the speed to decision making, the speed to advice, the speed to clarity is what we can bring to the table. So let's look at the first piece to make us more relevant right now and in the very near future, and that is a mixed modality in coaching. So not only are we looking at a modern consultant being not just a consultant but also a coach, we're also looking at them being a mentor, a trainer, an advisor, and potentially a teacher at different points in time. So we need to be able to mix our modalities. But when it comes specifically to the decision making and taking step process, the things that get in the way of us doing those things, they tend to be up here. And so whether it's psychology or whether it's coaching, having frameworks to enable the client to do things with those is going to be very useful. So there are all sorts of different models out there, and I'm going to show you a few of them in a minute, but the idea is to at least have one of these that you have in your back pocket so that when the problem comes up where a client needs to make a decision and it's really their mind that's getting in the way, some sort of limiting belief, we can reach back into our coaching frameworks and we can work them through a process. A lot of people think they're coaching, but they're not. There's a misunderstanding of what coaching is. Same way as there's a misunderstanding of what consulting is. Consulting is usually taking people through frameworks and processes to get results or make decisions and get outcomes. Well, the same thing is true for coaching. And so there's a number of different frameworks you can use so that you're not just referencing some old day at a little league sporting convention where a coach said a certain thing and you felt coached, so therefore are trying to imitate that with your clients. So here are 4 models that you can use, and I'm not going to walk you through all of them. I want you to go and do some research and actually decide which one's going to fit your business best. We've got the GROW model of coaching, we've got the CLEAR model, we've got OSCAR, And then we've got the NLP change model, which is the one I tend to use. And that's not because I love NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming for those who aren't across it. But I do like the model because it actually taps into really helping people step back from the challenge that's in front of them and then a step forward into some really solid change work. So I prefer that one. And the process that I use is association. They really need to get associated with whatever the problem is before they can actually change. That we need to then disassociate so they can step back from the situation and look at it from a third-party perspective and see what's going on, and that's a quantifiable way. Then we disassociate with tools, which we bring things to the conversation that are going to help them, but we still don't associate, which is kind of the emotive side of things. Then we associate with those tools, so we bring back the emotion and what they're going to, like how they're going to feel when they're using those tools. And then finally, we test and future pace. And testing is about seeing whether those tools have been understood, implemented, whether the change process that we're putting in place is starting to work. And then finally, future pacing it for those people so that they know that when they're in the situation, this is how it's going to feel and this is how they're going to use that methodology or those tools going forward. So I like that one. But again, as I said before, there is also Grow, there's Clear, there's Oscar, there's many other coaching modalities. That's just some of them. So I think as a consultant moving into this modern era, you really need to have some mixed modalities, and coaching is one of those I want to have in your back pocket so that you can bring it out and use it when people are stuck. By the way, if you haven't already subscribed, make sure to click the subscribe button and ring the bell so you get notified when new episodes just like this become available. It's interesting to see that only 25% of the people who have subscribed have actually rang that bell, which means 75% of the people will only see me as they show up. But if you'd like to get notified when these new episodes become available, so you have the option to watch them now, hit the bell because it'll send you a message to let you know that a new episode is live. The second is not shying away from artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, but actually getting some awareness and then some adoption so that you can be skilled up, right? We want to make sure that you've got not only an awareness of what are the different things that you can be using, but what your client can be using, and then have a general, at least, understanding of the usage, so you've gone and used these things before, so you can speak from experience. You already know that expertise isn't enough. Expertise with experience is the thing that is making you powerful. You know how to take knowledge and actually how to implement it, that's your experience, which gives you wisdom. Now, the same thing really needs to be part of your toolkit moving forward with emerging technology and artificial intelligence. So, what are the artificial intelligences that you can be using within your own business? What are the artificial intelligences of the market that you work with? And that's why I think a focus on a specific market is so much more useful, because you can be far more relevant than trying to keep up with everything in the emerging technology space across all markets. So the more relevant you are, probably the more niche you are, then the more opportunity you have for relevance and then staying up to date, so contextual relevance, as things continue to change. So what should you be doing to actually keep up to date? Well, there are actually some models and frameworks that you can use that already exist out there, and you can look into those. So again, I'm not going to talk about all the different models. I'm going to name a few so you can go and do research and decide which is going to fit you best. And of course, I'm going to give you my option on how I go about it. Now, number one is the AI maturity model, which is really an adoption maturity model. How can we move into having a mature understanding and then adoption of whatever the technology is now? So that's number one. Number two, you've got the AAA model of tech change, and that's been probably around for a long time. And in fact, the AAA model is used for all sorts of change management. But really, it's about awareness, and it's about adoption, and about acceleration. So in other models, acceleration was replaced with action. Okay, so these are all sorts of ways that you can get started and get moving. Now, number three is the AWARE framework of AI literacy. So again, how do you become aware, and then how do you start utilizing this sort of stuff? But for me, there are really 5 steps. Number one, we want to observe. So we want to see what's actually going on out there. Number two, we want to engage in that so that we're actually doing some work. We've got a hands-on approach to feeling out the new technology. Number three is we want to tool up. What are the tools that we're going to start utilizing in our world? And then once we start playing with those tools, what tools will we integrate? So number four is integrate. We're going to integrate some of these tools into the work that we are doing on an everyday basis, which is going to allow us to get not only more practice with them, but get a more intimate understanding of how they work. And then finally, we want to know what our future state is. So this is where we start creating goals and plans as to how we will integrate further with this technology or not, right? So the future state is how much do we want to be integrating with it, and what is our plan to make that happen. So the key really is to have a plan, not just for ourselves, but for our clients. So whether you're using the AI adoption maturity model or the AAA or the awareness, or even what I just spelled out there for you myself, there are a number of different frameworks we can start integrating into the way we communicate with our clients. And so once we've got frameworks, it makes it a lot easier for people to trust that we have a path forward for them, because that's what a framework is. It's a process, it's a path forward. And so they feel comfortable and they feel trust that there are specific steps. So start getting used to these if you're not already using them, because trust is always going to be the currency of the work that we do. And so the question is, when it comes to choice, are they going to trust you, or are they going to trust a machine? Now, the last one, which might actually be the most valuable, is helping people make decisions by identifying what are the priorities and actually putting them in order. Now, an artificial intelligence can do that if the client has the ability to frame their priorities based off the value that they provide. But we as a consultant get to see things from the outside, which means we can have a third-party perspective. And so taking people through priority-based frameworks to enable them to identify what is the priority, what's something that maybe is a second priority, maybe things that should no longer be on their to-do list, can be a big key in helping them make those decisions. So here are some options that you can actually use to help people decide on their priorities. The first of those is the ICE scoring model. That's something that a lot of people use. The second is the Moscow method, and interestingly, it's M but not O, S, C, not O, and W. And there are a number of steps in identifying what people could do, what they should do. And then finally, there's the Eisenhower Matrix, which is the one that I prefer to use. So the Eisenhower Matrix is a simple model of 4 quadrants, and I find it to be really useful for not only helping people prioritize things, but what is the order of those priorities. So it basically works like this. We've got things that are important, and I'll just put imp, not important, so not imp. We've got things that are urgent, and we've got things that are not urgent. And we will look at these as a matrix in comparing the different sides. So important but urgent, these are the things that are screaming at our door. And we want to reduce the amount of these things that are happening. Really, they shouldn't happen too often. If we've got a business that's working well, then the only screaming and yelling should come from outside of the business. And so, this is a child falls down and breaks their leg. All right, important but urgent. We take them to the hospital. But here's the key here. Not important. Important, but not urgent. So not urgent, but important. Not urgent, but important is those things like taking care of tax and getting the tax paid so that you don't have someone knocking on your door saying, I need all the tax money now. It's the equivalent of maintaining your car so that it doesn't break down and then suddenly become an urgency. These are the things that we should be managing and doing the most of in our business. Then you've got the not important but urgent. There's the things, again, that are knocking on our door that we really shouldn't be the ones dealing with. I would tend to delegate some of these things because maybe they're a client needing to get access to something. It's not really important for us to do, but it is important for them to do. So it's a perception of what's important and what's not. If we can have people like a virtual assistant and other people who are supporting us in our work, we would delegate those sort of things to them, where we would diarize something like this because this is something that we need to find and make important so that we get it done. And then you've got not important and not urgent. These are the things to delete. We want to remove them from our calendar. We want to remove them from our emails. We can remove those things from our world. We don't have to have them sitting in the RAM of our brain taking up space. This is just one of the methods. As I said before, you've got ICE as one of the other methods, and you've got Moscow. There are plenty of other frameworks that you can use to help people identify their priorities. But if you don't have something like this, it makes it difficult to work someone through a process. So really the key that we're talking about today is, do you have frameworks and processes for the things that are going to be important? So the things that are important now and in the future as a consultant is, helping people make decisions and helping people take steps forward, because human behavior and human nature is the thing that's getting in the way of most people making a decision. There are so many people who know what the thing is that they need to do, but they are struggling with making the decision because what that means for them in the future. Who will they become when they make that decision, and what are the possible catastrophes that could happen that they're inventing in their brain? And really, they just need someone to walk them through the process to make sure that they're doing it with guidance. Because the reality is that people will more easily make a decision with guidance where they may have struggled with that decision for years alone. You know, things are moving pretty fast, and so I completely understand how some consultants are getting weary of the change, and some people are really trying to cling to oversight and policy to try and hold on to that change so it doesn't change too fast under their hands. But the reality is, trying to create policies for this completely accelerated space that we're in now of technology is kind of trying to capture smoke. So yes, there should be policies in place, but they're going to be more principle based than they are about specific technology or specific circumstances, because those circumstances change too quickly. My recommendation for you, if you want to stay in this game, is really to stop looking so much at oversight and start looking at outcomes. How can we help clients achieve outcomes in a faster, more valuable, more impactful way? And so the things that I've shown you today are going to help you do just that. And so if you're wanting to be valuable, if you're wanting to be relevant right now and in this very near future, we really want to skill ourselves up with some technology. Absolutely want to understand what's going on and how we can leverage ourselves in that sense. We want to skill ourselves with different modalities, whether that be education modalities, whether that be coaching modalities. We also want to have frameworks in place so we can just pull them out when we need them, so that we can use them to help clients make decisions and help identify their priorities. If we put these things in place now, we're going to be skilled and practiced in them as we move into this new future, so that we continue to be valuable for decades to come. There are people who are going to be running artificial intelligence. There are people who are going to be guiding artificial intelligence, and there is those whose roles are going to be removed because of it. I think it's better to be in that proactive space where school's never out for the professional. If you have that understanding in your heart that if you're going to continue to advise people, then really you need to continue to develop. So an understanding that school's never out for the professional, we're always developing. We're always the student in one sense, even though we're the teacher in the other. And that doesn't mean we have to go back to university, and it doesn't mean we have to get degrees or doctorates. What it does mean is that we need to continue to learn, and we need to continue to adapt, and we need to continue to practice that work so we have a hands-on understanding of how things are changing. You know, the great thing about change, even though it can be fatiguing, is where we are most valuable is in times of change. We can help people bridge the gap from where they are to where they want to be. You know, you are valuable. You're a consultant now because of your experience and because of your expertise, which means you have those experiences behind you where you've got your expertise and you've got practical understanding of them. You have wisdom. Now the opportunity is to take that wisdom and apply it into this new playing field where things will continue to change. But having the resources in place now is going to enable you to stay relevant for decades to come. You know, if you are interested in continuing to adapt and evolve your consulting business, then you may be interested in the Consulting Guild, which is a community of specialist consultants who are all working together to actually create better businesses in this new environment. And consulting conversations, just like we're having today, is what we have inside the Guild. So if you are interested to know a little bit more, I invite you to go to theconsultingguild.com, put in an expression of interest, and we'll send you some details, and maybe you will be part of the Consulting Guild in the near future too. One thing you can do to get more value out of this channel is actually go to the channel and search for some of the keywords that you'd love some information around. You might find that we've already done a video or a podcast on this that you can listen to right now. Don't forget to subscribe by hitting the button and ringing the bell so you get notified for more episodes just like this. My name is Russell Pearson. This is episode 131 of the Your Consulting Business podcast. Until next time, stay passionate, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.